All right. Good morning, everyone. I hope y'all are having a great day today. My name is James Gilbreth. I'm a librarian with UAB Libraries. In particular, I'm the liaison to the School of Nursing. And we are here today to learn about the basics of EndNote. Uh, I will give full credit to my colleague, Megan Bell, who initially created this presentation. So, what we're going to be learning about today are the basics of how EndNote functions and how to get EndNote going. So we're going to start off by listing locations where EndNote libraries should not be saved. It seems like an odd thing to start out with, but it's really important. Uh, the files needed for EndNote to function correctly, um, output styles, adding references, inserting references into a Word document, all that sort of thing. And for folks who are just coming in, this is being recorded. And once we are done, I will send out the slides as well as a link to the recording. So why would you want to use EndNote? So EndNote is a citation manager, but it also allows you to organize your sources as well. So you can store references in full text articles from a bunch of different places. Um, you organize the references into groups based on a topic or project, and it's very easy to create both in-text citations and a bibliography with a click of a button. I graduated with my MLIS in 2009. We had the very basics of citation managers like this. They were not very usable. It was faster to just do it by hand. But things have improved significantly, and EndNote can really save you a lot of time, especially if you're working on a large scale research project, which has a lot of citations that you're going to have to wrangle. We do have a guide for EndNote, and I will note in particular, I'm talking about the desktop version of EndNote today. EndNote Online is a different product. Theoretically, they interact functionally. Uh, I have not always found that to be the case. So that's why we are talking about EndNote Desktop today. In the UAB Libraries EndNote guide on the front page, if you haven't done it yet, it gives you the directions for how you can download and install EndNote, and it has drop downs that will talk about a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today. To get the EndNote software, you go to UAB on the hub, sign in with your Blazor ID and password, download EndNote. One thing I will note is when you start the download, it will give you a software key. Just make sure you don't click off that page because you'll need that key to get EndNote going. Okay. So, unlike some other citation management solutions like RefWorks or SciWheel, EndNote is computer-based. It is a program you download citations to your computer, and you manage them in the program on your computer. You, oh, one moment. Here we go. Uh, So when you first open a EndNote, you'll be asked to create an EndNote library. This is where you should not save EndNote libraries. In a cloud environment, that includes I need to update this slide, Box, Google Drive, iCloud, or OneDrive. OneDrive is a cloud drive. A USB drive or a network drive. Due to the way that Clarivate has, or the procedures of Clarivate created EndNote, just the way it syncs files, your EndNote library will be corrupted over time. Sometime in the last year, I got a call from a faculty member in the School of Medicine who'd been using EndNote for 15 years. And without her knowledge, IT had migrated all her documents to a cloud drive. So it had started acting up. I helped her archive her library, and then immediately put her in touch with EndNote EndNote support. I'll get to that later. EndNote, we do have really robust EndNote user support though. So when you're saving your library initially, or whenever you create a new one, just be very careful where you're saving it. Now, to create an EndNote library, I will freely admit you'll notice these screenshots say EndNote 20. I still need to upgrade my EndNote to EndNote 21. So when y'all download it, if you haven't yet, it'll be EndNote 21, but it should look fairly similar. Uh, when you first open EndNote, you will get a pop-up that asks you where you want to save it. But for um, anytime you create a library after the first one, just go to File, select New, and then select where you want to save it to. So when you create EndNote, it will create .data and .enl files. Be sure not to delete those, and be sure the difficulty is once you've created the EndNote library and the library has created those support files, you can't move them in the file structure away from each other, um, because the library will remember the file path to where the documents were originally, and if you move it, it will get upset. So, exporting citations from databases. Internet Explorer, Firefox, Chrome, and Safari are all compatible with EndNote. Really, and since you're downloading the citations, it really should be fine with any web browser. Uh, when you're exporting references from databases to your EndNote library, an import file will be created. So in your web browser, when you download something, wherever that is in the browser window to let you know, you can just click on that file and download it. It should automatically save it to a downloads folder. So if you can't find that, just go to your downloads folder to get the file that's created. So exporting citations from PubMed. So go to PubMed. So whenever you're doing something in a library or with a library database, there will always be several ways to do the same thing. One way to select your citations in PubMed is to run your search, perform the search, check the checkboxes next to the articles you want. The top of the window, there's going to be a box that says Send To. Click on it, select your results, Citation Manager, and Create File. So just to walk you through what that looks like, we'll do it again live. So I'm going into PubMed. I'm going to run a search. I have a lot of results. I'm going to do this so that there are fewer results to deal with. Okay, 1,000 is still a lot, but that's more manageable. So you're selecting your articles you want to export. You can click through like this to select particular articles, or you can select all of them at the same time. But in either case, you'll click Send To, Citation Manager. You can choose the ones you've selected, or you can choose. I tend to choose all results, simply because when you're doing like a literature review sort of thing, you tend to want all the results to screen through them. But in any case, you select whatever you want, click Create File, and then you can see it creates this file up here. So I don't have EndNote open right now, but I'm going to click on it on a screen that you can't see. It's loading. But my EndNote, the last EndNote library I had open pops up, and here are the 4 imported references. Oop. No. Okay. So, when you're exporting from a database, you may get a pop-up that says, do you want to do this? Or, how do you want to open this file? Um, or open something like that. You'll sometimes get a dialog box that will ask you what you want to do. The RIS in Safari, the RIS file will go to the downloads folder. EndNote application must be closed. Drag and drop the file from downloads folder onto the EndNote icon on the dock. This isn't mentioned specifically in this presentation, but from experience, I will say if you are a Mac user, EndNote is unfortunately a little bit clunkier than it is on PC, just speaking from experience. So if you're exporting citations from a database on the EBSCO platform, if you're working with a database that will export citations, you're going to want a link that will say export, send to, something like that. If you're selecting particular articles in a database that's on the EBSCO platform, you can once again select particular articles. They will end up under the folder icon at the top navigation bar. You can click the little checkbox to select all, and then you click the export button. You're going to want to direct export in RIS format and hit save. And again, you may see those pop-ups. So one thing I will point out for databases on the EBSCO platform, for example, CINAHL. So you do your CINAHL search. It's a little more manageable. Okay. So once again, if you're selecting individual articles that you want to export, you'll click on this little icon that's a blue folder with the plus sign on it. When you do, it changes color. Oh, I hadn't noticed that before. It will let you know on the side navigation bar which ones you've selected. But again, you would go up here to folder, select all, export, and then direct export in RIS format. Once again, you'll get the pop-up, click on it, and those are my most recently imported references. Now, slightly different on the EBSCO host platform if you want to save all the results from your search. You would go here under the share button. And for some reason, you have to tell EBSCO to email you a link to download the exported results. So you be sure to change to RIS format, type in your email address, and click send. Link to retrieve exported items will be emailed to your email address. Please retrieve them within 168 hours of receipt. That is a very specific number. I'm not sure why that number is what it is. You should get the email within 5 to 10 minutes. All right. Using the group feature. Here we go. So on your left navigation bar in EndNote, you can sort of think of the EndNote library as uh, like a drawer in a filing cabinet, perhaps. And each group is like a folder within that filing cabinet drawer. So all of your articles or things that you've exported are all in one place, and then you organize them based on however you want to organize them, whatever works for you. Uh, you see here it's labeled by the database they're exported from, but sort of philosophically, um, however you use EndNote is up to you. Some people use one EndNote library for everything they do. Other people, for each new project they do, they create a new EndNote library. That's really up to you, and the kind of project you're working on. If you're doing, maybe it's because librarians tend to do a lot of research projects for other people. Like I tend to create a new library for each new project. But again, it's up to you and how you want to organize things. So to use the group feature, you click the group drop-down menu, create group, name it, and click enter. So just to demonstrate that, up here, create group, on group. So I've created my new group where I can put things. So for example, if I want these three references, I just exported. I'm going to select all of them and click and drag them over. Which, by the way, to select all, if you don't know, just Control or Command A for all and just click and drag it. You can also right-click My Groups, create group, also a new group, and then you have another group of articles here. Really, this just certainly makes it more functional to use, because your EndNote library, if you use one library for everything, you'll get thousands to tens of thousand articles over time. And you really don't want to be scrolling through, all references constantly to try and find what you're looking for. All right, so output styles. Your output styles control how references will appear in citations and bibliographies, or when using the copy formatted command. Output styles control the format of data that's sent from EndNote. And to see where that is, output styles is under Tools, Output Styles, and then you can select the style you want. Uh, if you do not see the style here that you want to use, you can open Style Manager, which is actually a separate small program that's in EndNote. And these little check boxes let you select which ones will appear in the output styles dropdown. And when I tell you there are a lot of output styles in EndNote, it's really quite baffling. So you have big organizational level styles like APA, MLA that are used across disciplines, Turabian, so on like that. And then you have like journal specific styles like toxicology, environmental health science, or the journal traffic, that sort of thing. So if you're getting a manuscript ready to submit to um, a journal, you can see if there is an output style specifically for that journal in your EndNote styles. So EndNote does a lot. You can actually make your own output styles in EndNote, but that's more of an advanced sort of thing. So I'm just going to close that. So as I said, you have your output style. So here is APA. So if I wanted to get, say, for example, these three articles into the bibliography of a document. So here I'm opening up blank Word document. I can select these three, go to References, Copy Formatted Reference, and that formatting is based on the output style I've selected. Then I go over here and hit Paste. And there it is. Now, I'll mention in passing, the information that comes out of EndNote, or the citations that come out of EndNote, are only as good as the information that went into EndNote in the first place. So just remember, as the author, you're ultimately responsible for your citations, their formatting, and what's in them. So at a glance, these look fine, just kind of glancing over them. However, if you did have an article where something was wrong in the formatting, you can go to edit, find whatever it is, and change it so that whenever it's output, it will be correct. Okay. So, if you're using AMA format, uh, EndNote will format your in-text citations and bibliography. So it will do superscripts, it'll do footnotes, endnotes, um, and the same thing with APA format. So it will format your parenthetical citations and so on like that. Uh, Caitlin asked, will this also impact the output styles available in Word? I don't know offhand. I think the answer to that is yes. That is to say, well, I'll get to the output styles in Word in just a second. So, in fact, right now, actually. So, inserting citations into a Word document. So, when you install EndNote, EndNote will install a plugin into Word, the EndNote toolbar for Word. So, you will see. So, while Word has a built-in reference formatting tool, this will be available also. And it says specifically in Note 20. So doing references this way is certainly different from copy and pasting them, and we'll demonstrate that in a second. If you cannot find, it's technically called Cite While You Write. If you're on a Mac, you would go to Templates and Add-ins, and it would be available there. In Word, I'm actually not sure. It'll probably be under, Get Add-ins, so it would probably be somewhere here. Yeah, my add. Well, it says it's not an add-in. So this is what happens when I go off script. But it would be somewhere in the options or settings in Word. Okay. So in the EndNote bar, you're first going to want to pick the output style that you'll be using. So there is a drop down. Go back where you would select it. And here, yes. So to answer your question, Caitlin, these, we can compare it. Yeah. Yep. The output styles that I have checked in Style Manager that show up in the output styles dropdown are the same ones that are available in the style options here in Cite While You Write. Thank you for asking that. I had not thought of that before, and now I know. That's useful for me to know. So APA 7th is what a lot of folks will be using. And then whenever you want to put an in-text citation, you have something you've written out, you put the cursor where you want to click add the in-text citation, and then you click insert citation. So to do that live, this is a sentence. And if I want to cite that, go to insert citation. I don't have anything here yet because I haven't added anything from EndNote. So I type the last name of the first author, click find, say I want culture and self-care. So Brown 2022, here's the title. I select it. I click insert, and there is my parenthetical citation. And you'll notice it immediately starts creating your bibliography. So the first time you put an in-text citation, uh, I would return down a little bit, insert a page break, and then just move it onto its own page to keep working. Yep, you search for the ones and then you click insert. Uh, you can also okay. So you can also here. Okay, so again, this is where I show I need to update my PowerPoint. Oh, I see what it's saying. So, right. So the thing is, Cite While You Write syncs is in constant sync with EndNote Desktop. So here is another sentence. So from an EndNote, if I wanted to cite this one, I can just click the quote button, and wherever my cursor is in the document, it will put the in-text citation uh, of the article that I have selected. And it is automatically put it already formatted down here in the bibliography. Okay, so the one trick with Cite While You Write and the word plugin is do not edit or delete EndNote text within a Word document by using the backspace or delete keys. The whole functionality of the plugin is based on a bunch of invisible coding that it adds to your document. So if you backspace something out, you will be breaking that coding that is controlling how the citations function in your document, and it will really go haywire. So if there's something wrong with the reference, so for example, something I've seen a lot, there will be like the authors or the title will be in all caps or something like that, and you may not notice until after you've inserted it. So what you can do is go back over here uh, to your EndNote library, open this up, click Edit, fix what's wrong, and hit Save, and then click Update Bibliography, Update Citations and Bibliography here, and it will update anything that needs to be fixed. Also, if you need to remove an in-text citation that you've already put, you would go to Edit and Manage Citations. Select the article you want to remove and click Remove Citation. So, for example, uh, edit and manage citations. You can also edit it here, but say I wanted to remove, I'd picked the wrong article and wanted to remove it. I click the drop down, click Remove Citation, it disappears. So, and it removes it from the references page. So what you can also do is say when you're done with the basic writing and you've got all the citations in there, you can remove the EndNote coding from your document. So one, EndNote will not always format your citations perfectly. It usually will, but sometimes you'll want to manually edit something. And when you're submitting your paper to a journal or for a class or something like that, or maybe even sending it to a colleague who may tinker with the text, you'll probably want to remove the EndNote code. So to do so, you would go under Tools on the EndNote toolbar, convert to plain text. So then you'll be notified that a new copy of your Word document is being created that's not linked. So just name it in whatever way so that you know it's not the old version that has the invisible coding in it, which we want to do that live. Here we go. Now it's under convert citations and bibliography. I'm going to convert to plain text. Sure. Save it to OneDrive. Bad parameter. Wonderful. Always what you want to see. Let us try that again. Oh, interesting. Well, it did remove the coding. However, it didn't quite do what I wanted or expected it to do, which it was supposed to pop up another new window that had it in there, but it says this one is the one where the coding's gone, which is fine in this particular instance. All right. So, one really nice thing about EndNote is the find full text feature. So, at some point, you'll need to read the full text of the articles you're using for your research. What Find Full Text does is it will go connect with our databases, and wherever there's a downloadable PDF or a link to the full text of an article, it will go out and retrieve it for you. And there are instructions for how to set up and use the Find Full Text feature on our guide. So just to show you what it looks like, um, we'll see how it does with this selection. References, Find Full Text. I'm already authenticated. So now we see that it is searching. So the one thing about Find Full Text is it is not perfect, unfortunately. So sometimes it will say not found for articles that we do have access to for technical reasons that have to do with the back end of databases. Anything that's available through like PubMed Central or is open access, it will find those and it will download the PDF or give a link. In this case, it found 0 of them. In the cases where it does find a PDF, it will attach the PDF here. And if it finds a link, it will put it here in the preview window. All right. So if you want to learn more about EndNote or to get help, we do have a guide for EndNote as well as one for EndNote Online. Uh, and you're also very welcome to contact us for assistance. We do have very robust chat from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. If you have a question outside of those hours and want assistance, you're always welcome to email us directly, or you can put a ticket in with our chat service and get assistance that way. Uh, Additionally, if you would take a moment while you are coming up or while you have questions to ask, if you would do me the great favor of providing some feedback on my library instruction, I would greatly appreciate that. It's helpful for me and it's helpful for our department as well. Put the link in chat. Oh, absolutely. If I exit it, yeah. Do. Thank you, Caitlin. There we go. So what questions do you all have for me? Well, thank you, Caitlin. I appreciate that. Questions from anyone else? Thank you, Katie. Well, not hearing any questions, thank you all very much for attending today.
Beth put a comment in the chat that I would
Sure.
be interested to hear the answer to.
Oh, what if you
Yeah.
were working in a group?
Yep. What if you're working in a group? Some people have EndNote, some people don't. They send you stuff.
Yeah, I will say that if I'm being honest, that is my biggest criticism of EndNote. Theoretically, EndNote and EndNote Online should make it so that you can collaborate with other people. I have not really found that to be the case. So if you are collaborating with other people, if you're working with people who aren't using EndNote, that's that's certainly complicated. I mean, ideally, you want to get everyone using the same kind of platform. But of course, if they're researchers at other institutions, they may not have EndNote, they may not have access to EndNote. There are a couple of things you can do. So, I mean, this isn't something you would want to do a lot because it's kind of cumbersome. But say, for example, you wanted to send, say, I wanted to send this list of 294 citations to another researcher. Um, I can select them all, go to export. Um, I'm exporting them as an XML file, name it whatever you want to name it, and then hit save. And that, uh, because it's a citation management program creating the XML file, that it really should be readable by any other uh, citation management program that can import XML files. So really the answer is importing and exporting things back and forth. That's not a really ideal answer. And even if you are working in a group that's all using EndNote, you can, so you see there is a drop down for groups shared by others. So in theory, this is where that should go and that should work. But that is dependent on everyone's EndNote desktop syncing with EndNote Online flawlessly and those EndNote Online accounts communicating with each other.
Yeah, I've had trouble getting an EndNote Online account. I think my at UABMC email is getting in the way there.
Yeah, that's very possible. That may be a good question for EndNote support. Um, but that could also be some sort. I don't know how the IT stuff works over on the hospital side, on the medical side. It may be something's blocking that from functioning correctly. I don't know. Um, but if you are working with other EndNote researchers, another option is to, and this is something everyone should do, maybe either every so often or when you're done with the project, you can compress your library. So what this is an archived version of your EndNote library. So you can create it with file attachments, all references in library, and it's a .enl file. Uh, you tell where you want to save it, and then it will output, what is it? An ENLX file, um, something like that. So so while you cannot put EndNote libraries on a shared drive or a cloud drive, you can put the compressed archived libraries on a shared or cloud drive, and you can also email them back and forth. Like that compressed library, I had checked something for a faculty member, uh, compressed it, essentially zipped it and sent it over. So that's another option.
Can you show me again how you did that,
At,
created that compressed library?
certainly. Uh, so I'm going to go to File, Compress Library.
Okay.
You can probably just leave this as it is. I mean,
Right.
if you only want to do certain things, just tell it where you want to save it and then click save.
Okay. Great.
Yep. So that's for other folks who work with EndNote, that's probably the best way to share things back and forth, honestly. Thank you, Beth. That's a really good question. Um, as big of a company as Clarivate is and as much money as they get, perhaps we can all encourage them to come up with a better online sharing solution, and perhaps they will at some point. Any other questions for me? Well, thank you all very much for your time and attention. For more UAB library workshops, you can check our events page or the UAB events calendar. They're all listed there now. You're very welcome to reach out to me directly if I can be of assistance, and I hope y'all all have a great day.